Hi, this is Diamanti, and welcome to another episode of TFI Insights. And today we have with us once again Jenny Fong, Vice President of Marketing at Diamanti. Jenny, it's good to have you back on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
If I'm not wrong, CNCF recently came out with a study, the state of cloud native development, that kind of points out a lot of challenges that developers face, especially with Kubernetes. So, can you kind of share some of the challenges it strikes out, from Diamanti's perspective?
Yeah, so the newest study showed now there's 2.7 million developers working with Kubernetes, which is just incredible in terms of the adoption growth and how fast that's happened. But what we're seeing also, and there's some other data out there, is while companies are easily getting their initial projects of Kubernetes out to production, what's happening is it's hard to actually mature and expand that into more business units, more clusters, more environments, and more applications. So we're getting past that point of initial adoption, and now it's really this new set of challenges around how do I mature, how do I grow, how do I expand in an enterprise environment. So that's a really interesting space for Diamanti.
Right. So now we talked about challenge part. Let's talk about the solution part. Let's talk about Spectra. First of all, what is it, and can you also talk about what are the problems that is solved? Some of the challenges that you already mentioned from the study itself.
Sure. So Spectra is a Kubernetes management platform, and it's the only one in the market that has an integrated management plane as well as data plane. Now, the data plane is really where we start to see some of the differentiation of how we're solving problems, because, again, when you start to think about not just those first initial projects, but when you think about production applications, databases or data analytics workloads, things that have value and are mission critical for the company, you start to have to think about things like backup and snapshotting and disaster recovery, uptime and availability, performance. All of those things are things we can take care of because we have the integrated data plane in our solution. So our focus really is solving that next set of enterprise problems that help people get to a broader adoption of Kubernetes.
And if I'm not wrong, Spectra 3.0 was also released this week. So I want to know about what are some of the key highlights of this release, and also if you can talk about some new features, and also it's the roadmap, if you can already talk about it.
Sure. So Spectra 3.0 was generally available this week. It adds multi-cluster management capabilities, which means you can adopt or provision additional clusters, and that happens to be both on-prem and in the public cloud. We also added a lot of new capabilities around access and resource controls so that we can give you secure multi-tenancy for both enterprise use cases as well as managed service provider use cases. And then finally, because of our data plane architecture, we've added the capability to migrate stateful applications, so meaning persistent volumes across clusters. This is all part of our general shift in our evolution of the Diamanti platform to focus more on these software-based challenges. If you've been following the company, what we used to sell is an appliance-based model, which included hardware and software. But with this release and some of the partnerships that we have set up with leading x86 suppliers, so companies like Dell Technologies and Lenovo, we are putting more of our R&D efforts towards the software problems and solving those software issues. So this is a very momentous release for us in terms of the evidence of that evolution.
And you also provided early access to the community of this release. So talk about the early access program also. What is the goal and what kind of feedback you received?
Yeah, so early access programs to us are very valuable ways to make sure that we're addressing real enterprise challenges. We ran the program July and August with a number of different Fortune 500 customers. And, the biggest things we saw are these patterns around operational scalability and multi-tenancy. So one of our financial services customers, they're already using the Diamanti platform to run their database workloads, but they see this capability of doing multi-cluster management as helping them scale even more efficiently across the hybrid cloud. There's a separate customer who is more of like a software service provider who is looking at the multi-tenancy capabilities as a way to create and provision environments that can be handed downstream to their end customers. And so we're seeing a lot of the use cases that we were designing for come to fruition through that early access program.
Now I want to talk about the transition of the company, for a hardware-centric platform to a software-defined platform, which software-defined. Everybody's the days of black boxes are gone. Everybody's running commodity hardware. So talk about this transition itself.
Yeah, this is something that we've been on the path for quite a while. But again, like the 3.0 release really is a culmination of multiple efforts here. The key thing for us is, again, I think the ecosystem around Kubernetes has solved the get started with Kubernetes problem. But what we're seeing is a lot of companies, as they mature, run into sort of these hurdles that are not really solved because of all the different disparate pieces that make up a solution. So by focusing on software, we're able to take all these disparate parts and package it together for this easy enterprise-based solution. By partnering with Dell and Lenovo, we end up having the ability to leverage their world-class supply chains, manufacturing support organizations, so that we can focus our efforts and our innovation on solving that other problem that I was just talking about, which is bringing all the pieces together. So this is a great transition for us in terms of being able to put more emphasis on some of the areas that we want to continue to invest in, which is really about making Kubernetes scalable and easy to operate.
Right. But the fact is also that cloud native or Kubernetes space is a crowded space when it comes to software. So how is your strategy kind of different that, you still being able to differentiate while you are also leveraging and contributing to a lot of open source technology that everybody else is using?
Yeah, but because of, again, we have this focus on the data plane layer, which is really the key to integrate the hardware with the software. And I think that's a really specific case. I'll mention, other vendors out there, they started at the software layer, but they're starting to run into the same issues where if you don't communicate well with the hardware underneath, there's, poor experience for the end customers or the end users. And so we think we've solved that challenging layer that is really the in-between hardware and software, which now allows us to really focus on the higher level software problems. So that's kind of our differentiated approach.
Right. And who would be, as you transition, who would be your typical customer?
We typically target those larger enterprises, and that's because of their maturity. There was a good study that was showing how companies with greater than 1,000 employees tend to be the ones that have multiple clusters of Kubernetes out there. So we're talking, 5 or more clusters. So that really is kind of the group of customers that we target. They tend to have these more legacy type of infrastructure that they want to integrate with new cloud native infrastructure. So we're solving a different set of problems there versus, say, the tech startup that is, pure cloud native from the day one.
Perfect. As you transition from, hardware to software, will you still be involved with the hardware business or you're totally separating from it?
We still have our IO acceleration technology. This is a PCIe-based card that is added to the x86 server, which gives us the performance advantages and consistency around quality of service. So we will continue to innovate on that card and to make sure that it's well tied into the Kubernetes stack through our CNI and CSI plugins. But again, with our partnerships with Dell and Lenovo, what we're able to do is actually jointly manufacture that together. So customers get the x86 server with the vendor of their preference with our IO acceleration technology and our software stack.
So the world that we are living in is changing, and more and more companies, organizations, they are moving towards cloud native technologies. So how do you see this transition will either benefit from it or help companies in their own transition from their own data center to cloud native? Though there will be a mix of, data center is not going away. It will always be a hybrid and multi-cloud world. But still, how do you see this transition will help you and the ecosystem?
Yeah, I think there's even more emphasis this year. If you haven't, modernized your infrastructure and applications yet, the urgency is even greater this year, just due to where people are located, people being more distributed. And so I do think that people are looking at this, but they're looking at it with a lens of what is economical for the company, what's a smart investment that's safe, and that minimizes my risk and exposure. So there's a more cautious look at how we do this expansion, but the modernization efforts are definitely more urgent.
Jenny, thank you for talking to me today about not only Spectra 3.0, but also the transition of the company. And as usual, I look forward to talk to you again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, and have a great day.